Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be following Arteezy's Drow Ranger. This is a hero that I think is going to start shooting into the professional meta and even in pub meta sometime soon, and there's a couple of reasons for that which I'd like to discuss today. The first reason why I think Drow Ranger is going to shoot into the meta is honestly just because all the other carries have gotten nerfed. Medusa recently got nerfed, not by too much. I actually think Medusa is a very good hero right now, maybe even the best carry. Tiny got nerfed, Slark has been nerfed. You know, like, Luna is much worse than what she used to be. I don't think PL's in a great spot. And so all of a sudden, a lot of these heroes are just kind of not as good as they used to be. And so Drow pops up. On top of that, Drow has received some pretty major buffs as of late. The biggest buff that she recently received was that multi-shot, starting from 7.30C, now starts to apply to the bonus damage component of Frost Arrows. Originally, it did slow, but it didn't give the bonus damage. Now you might be thinking to yourself, oh, Speed, that's not a big deal. The thing is, 20 damage per hit in the early game is a lot. Considering you do 3 waves, that's an extra 60 damage per multi-shot. You can imagine if they buff any nuke in the game by 60 damage, it's obviously going to be quite significant. Not only is this good for fighting, it's also just good for farming. On top of that, they also made it where the agility bonus for marksmanship in the most recent patch was buffed by 5% at all levels, which is quite significant. A 5% buff to Drow's agility when she buys so many agility items, or later into the game buys agility items, is very impactful. And so nonetheless, you can see why I think this hero is going to be pretty good. I'm going to talk about what items to buy, where to draft it, how to play it, and let's get into it. By the way, guys, if you want to become absolutely broken, well, what you need to do is sign up to the GameLeap website down below right now. The reason why you should do that is because every single day we post a new video there. Content that you simply just will never get on YouTube, we post every single day to the website. It's really top tier stuff. I'm very proud of what I make over there. We also have other creators, many of my great friends who are top tier Dota players, creating guides about different heroes, different roles, different items, skill builds, talent builds, everything you need to know to get to the next rank. So if you feel a little bit lost, you're a little bit stuck, click the link down below. I'll see you guys there. And now let's get into the video. All right. Starting off in the laning stage, you honestly want to be very aggressive as Drow. You guys know I usually don't preach that as carry. Generally, as the carry in the early levels, you kind of want to sit back, get your CS, you know, use your nukes to secure the range creeps, but Drow doesn't have that. She doesn't have a nuke for the range creep. Yeah, you have multi-shot, but honestly, the arrow base damage is literally less than your actual damage, and so it's not really too good of a range creep secure. It's not nothing, but it's definitely not great, and so instead, you want to abuse the fact that Frost Arrows do not draw creep aggro, and so you can apply a lot of aggression. That is why, in my opinion, Drow works best with lane dominators. Heroes like Bane and Undying are some of my favorite. You pair these heroes with Drow, they're going to secure her a good lane, which she absolutely needs. She also needs a frontliner in the lane, usually, which, you know, these heroes also do. And so this is the perfect combo. I love, you know, this draft. Just their draft in general, in my opinion, is fantastic. Tiny, Pango, Bane, a lot of heroes that can go in, frontline, and initiate and set up for the Drow and the SF damage. Now, the key to playing a good Drow is mirroring movements. What I want to show you that Arteezy does so well is his ability to basically react to every single person's step in the laning stage, including his supports. So as we can see here, Bane is stepping up, so that's an opportunity for him to go on Lion. Lion has passed the wave, this is obviously go time. Same thing if Lion was right here, he would do this as well. However, he does take a step back, and the reason for that was he's afraid of a Lion stun. Now, to be fair, honestly, in that case, he probably could have manned up, but the general intuition that you want to have, that Arteezy clearly has here, is if someone approaches, you take a step back. You hit, move back. Then, once they move forward, you move forward. Drow needs to play a game of kiting. You essentially need to mirror their movements the entire time. Even here, you can see, Marcy moves forward, then she retreats, Arteezy chases. She moves forward even an inch towards him, and he takes a step back. It's this constant limbo that you're playing, and it's very important on Drow to get chip damage without overcommitting. And the reason why this is so important is if you don't chip people down in the laning stage, you're almost guaranteed to die. At 295 movement speed, Drow is one of the easiest heroes to kill in the game if you get on top of her. And as a result, if you don't go aggressive, you're essentially going to get ganked and gone on by full HP heroes when they hit level 2 and level 3. Now, the general skill build you want to go is 2 points into Frost Arrows, 1 point in Gust, and 2 points in a multi-shot. That's by level 5. At level 3, you want to have 2 points Frost Arrow, 1 point multi-shot. Basically, the time you take Gust is when you think you can die. So essentially, he doesn't think he can die at level 3 or easily based on his lane, so he takes the Frost Arrows. Generally, just taking Frost Arrows at level 3 is a requirement. upping the slow from 10% to 25% is literally 50% more than double. It's an extremely large spike, so you always have to take that. You can consider taking Gust at level 4 if the lane is really, really bad. For instance, something like Marcy definitely makes sense to have a point in Gust against, and so that's how you kind of want to look at it. Now, a big thing to consider about Drow is the fact that your hero gets ganked really easily. As you can see in this clip here, we're 8 minutes in, the Marcy's pushing in the top wave, and what do we know about Marcy? If Drow stays in the lane against Marcy, odds are she's going to die. Any +1 stun, or even just a slight misstep in positioning, and he can get solo killed. Drow with level 3 multi-shot can jungle very quickly. You don't even need level 3 multi-shot, all you really need is your ulti. So once you have your ulti, just keep that in mind. Get into the jungle, avoid deaths, and hit your Dragonlance timing. That is why the early CS is so important. The biggest thing, in my opinion, that always separates your average carry player from the pros, and I can't stress this enough, is last hits. Alright, I know it sounds simple, but look at Arteezy's CS. 59 by minute 8. Keeping his game simple, no kills, no deaths, just hitting his timings. Now keep in mind you don't want to rotate to the triangle too early on Drow. Multi-shot generally isn't good enough to kill the Ancients super early on. However, when you have Dragonlance, that's when Ancients become more of a feasible option, as it's very easy to kite them. However, just in general, if you're playing on Dire, being able to use the multi-shot on multiple camps at the same time, and just play a safe portion of the jungle with camps near each other, is generally the way to go. You don't need to make your game complex. I don't recommend rotating. I generally don't recommend sieging mid-tower. If you have the opportunity to stay in your lane and clear up all the nearby camps, just do that. Don't TP bottom the fight, just flash farm everything. On that note, the only type of kill you want to go for is situations like this, where someone is completely isolated. Drow does do a decent amount in the early game, but you can even see here, with Marcy being half HP and the potential to turn with no grip and a Pugna shifting over, he goes back to jungling. You can see the gist of this hero is to play it safe. Play it safe, play it safe. Only clean up kills. Think of yourself as a sniper. I mean, you literally are kind of a sniper. So look at yourself that way. Another simple but very important basic trick is to stack for yourself. Just keep this in mind in general. I think it's always important to remind you guys that, like, hey, you know, this is one of those heroes that easily farm stacks. It's 100% necessary for you to do this to amplify your farm as much as possible. And you can see very, very efficient cleaning up the majority of the camp. Eventually, as the laning stage progresses, this is when Drow tends to need to shift towards mid. Honestly, this is why I generally hate heroes like SF as my mid laner when I'm playing Drow, and the reason for that is SF doesn't make very many moves on the map. He can, but for the most part, because of SF's lack of mobility, if he does that in a high MMR game, he'll feed. That's so funny. That's actually so timely. Guys, I do these videos like generally live. That was so perfect. I just said that, and then, oh my god, he just dies. That's you know, classic SF, man. Tries to do anything slightly aggressive and just feeds. And that's the thing, though. That's why you don't really want SF on your team, because if you have an SF and he tries to make moves for you and make space, which I respect from Alone on his SF here, he's gonna kind of feed. And that's why heroes like Kunkka, Void Spirit, Storm Spirit, Ember, in my opinion, are a little bit better with Drow in general, because Drow, once the laning stage breaks down, wants to leave her lane. As I said, you stay in your lane as long as possible. If you win your lane or go even and they rotate out, stay there. Don't force your team out of their lanes. Don't make them rotate to save you. Play it safe, play it simple. And then when people hit their item timings and become really strong, shift away from the lane, over to the mid lane, into the tri-camp. And this is where you're going to be spending most of the early game. The reality is Drow doesn't want to take chances, right? She wants to defend mid tower. Unfortunately, there is no mid tower. The enemy team is a Pugna, but you get the point. The best possible fights for Drow is when the enemy team engages first and Drow gets to respond. And yeah, before we skip into the mid game, just want to show you one more clip of him farming the tri-camp. Funny enough, I even coached a Drow today, very briefly, and this was a big thing I actually mentioned to him. You know, just farm the tri-camp. Don't feel like you have to show up to every single fight, especially if the fights are across the map. For instance, he would have had to commit TP top to go show up to that fight. You know, that would really put a hamper in his farm. It would just make him not be able to stack and take the Ancients, and that's like a kill. Every Ancient camp is like literally a kill in the early game, even into the mid game. And so just keep that in mind. Don't feel like you have to do stuff. Next up, let's talk about Manta style usage. Naturally, the item progression every single game should be as follows. Wand, Treads, Dragonlance with the casual Sage's Mask. I do like that. Drow has a lot of mana problems. Sage's Mask is probably the most efficient mana item in the game besides the raindrops, but those can get burnt. Raindrops are honestly good in Drow though too. Like, I recommend them. If you think the enemy team is going to be ganking you and diving you, maybe they have a storm, raindrops are good. But yeah, let's talk about Manta usage. So getting into the mid game, what people do wrong with Mantas is they either waste them early in the fight when they aren't really under any threat. Like I was doing an in-house, and like when I was streaming, I was doing the in-house, and like the Medusa was kind of just wasting it over and over again, like right at the beginning of the fight. You don't really want to use it for damage in teamfights. In teamfights, you use it to keep yourself alive. For instance, in this game, to prevent him from getting tossed by Marcy if she jumps him, right? Just that extra second can let him get Gust off because Gust has an animation, so you can Manta then Gust, that type of thing. If he gets gone on by, you know, a Pugna, if he gets gone on by Wyvern Q, anything like that, just lets him reposition. When it comes to split pushing, you would generally want to use Manta to take farm you actually usually couldn't, or farm that you could take but would be risky to take. So for instance, right here, 1703, wave currently at just in front of the tier 3 tower, so sending Mantas down mid as he plans to retreat into the triangle is absolutely the best option for using your Manta. Unfortunately, they do get cleared out, but that's the gist. He wouldn't want to go mid there, he didn't want to push, he wanted to go back into his tri-camp, but wanted to farm mid at the same time. That's when you Manta. And so essentially that's your best bet. Like, to really keep it simple, guys, if you're like, oh, what do I do mid game? The best bet, if you just want to win your games, tri-camp with D-Lance, Mantas to the mid lane, rinse, repeat. Especially in your average pub when people are kind of just running around. If you have the opportunity to just flash farm like this, and you can hit some nutty drought timings, this hero dominates. Now in team fights, you're generally playing around max range and your multi-shot. Keep in mind, multi-shot is something you want to use almost as early as you can in team fights. The only time you don't use multi-shot early is if someone's isolated. So let's say Wyvern was like right here right now, you wouldn't want to burn multi-shot. Multi-shot is one of those spells where it outranges your natural auto attack and allows you to stay in position. So essentially you use it in, well, this exact scenario. Enemy team walks up, goes for a sleep. This is the perfect multi-shot. Just some chip damage, right? Beautiful. About half of Wyvern's HP. This is why multi-shot's insane. Like literally, I think only 2 of them hit the Wyvern because of the sleep, and it did half of his health. Wyvern even just straight up gets bursted. Nutty damage. And that is why when you hit level 15, you should take the multi-shot cooldown. Arteezy also took Gust Blind, which was a little bit surprising to me considering Frost Arrow damage works with multi-shot, but to be fair, it's only 15 damage extra, and honestly 50% miss chance. You know, when you really think about it, is pretty insane considering the duration of Gust. That's a 5-second miss chance. That's like Troll W hitting you from range. It's a much bigger AoE, so it's cool. It's cool. I kind of like it. You know, against something like Gyro, if he presses flak and you can hit him with Gust, I mean, he's not going to hit very many hits. He's going to miss a lot. Moving on ahead, the next item Arteezy buys is Blink Dagger. The enemy team has very bad initiation this game, so he can be pretty greedy. Honestly, generally I recommend, like, let's say they have like an Ember or a Storm. I'm a much bigger fan of Hurricane Pike Rush instead of the Blink Dagger in that case. And the reason for that is it gives you a lot more HP, so it just makes you straight up more tanky. And it's obviously, you know, these are heroes that can cancel your Blink. So if you're against a lot of heroes that easily cancel Blink, then I recommend going Pike. In this game, they have bad initiation, so he can play around the fights really easily with Blink Dagger, and that's why it's good this game. Upcoming here, I just want to show a beautiful display of spellcasting from Arteezy. It's honestly super nice, and it even shows like really good usage of the Manta. I talked about it earlier, how people just use it for damage. You want to use it for disengage and just kiting certain spells, especially single target spells. So as he goes on the Pugna here, leads in with the Blink Gust, and he sees the Marcy's obviously going to go for a Q here. Pretty simple play. What does he do? Q about to come out, Manta, boom, cancels the Q. Now Marcy doesn't know which one's real, right? And so she kind of has to guess. And if she doesn't get it right, well, then she probably dies. Or he can even use his Pike, just like he does, and manage to kite that as well. To finish it all off, he's going to drop the multi-shot. You can see just so much damage, so much mobility, so much kite. And that is why I love this Drow build. I really dislike the Drow builds that go for like early butterfly and stuff like that. Is it an option? Yes, but honestly, it makes teamfighting in the early game so hard as your HP pool is like 1600. Another quick little tip for Manta style is what Arteezy does here. When you're sieging high ground and your creeps die or die to glyph, what you can do is you can send the Mantas up, and he actually splits them like this to gain as much vision as possible and to cancel any potential Blink Daggers, whether or not it's from Wyvern or from Lion. Finally, to top it all off, at level 15, you really want the multi-shot cooldown. At level 20, take multi-shot damage. Even though the Gust cooldown is kind of cool with the Gust Blind talent, honestly, just multi-shot is your best spell. It's really what makes hero good in my opinion. That's why in teamfights, you really need to make sure you're connecting on multi-shot. If you're not and you're just wasting it or missing it, or just forgetting to use it for that matter, it's such a mistake because this is honestly the best spell Drow has. And yeah, Drow without any real agi items or major agi items just shreds. I mean, to be fair, Manta style does give 26 agility, Hurricane Pike gives 20, but other than that, he even goes Shadowblade as his next item, which he did 2 games in a row. And I love this. Like, it's just more mobility. It's kiting around the fight, playing around multi-shot, playing around just baiting the enemy team in and being able to stay out onto the outside of the fight and just pump out damage. And you can see even in this clip here, I mean, the amount of damage Drow does is nuts when she procs. I mean, 471 damage from an auto attack off a proc. That's partially the buff coming into play there. And yeah, it's just insane damage. And that's going to be all for today's video. The next item Arteezy generally goes is BKB. He tries to delay it as long as possible. And in general, when I think he's picking Drow, he's looking for team comps where they don't have proper backline jump. That is, of course, when Drow thrives. So this hero is often best left as a last pick if you have the option. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace!